Hi, this is Ron Nutter, and welcome to another edition of Tech Bites with Ron Nutter. This time I'm going to show you how to get your Wemo Smart Plug talking Cortana, or talking to Cortana. Say that fast 3 times and you not get in trouble. And that starts now. Now, if you've not dealt with the Wemo plug much, if any, or you have and you're saying, hold it, that doesn't integrate with Cortana. Well, my answer is going to be, yeah, but. And while there is not native integration like there is with Alexa, there is integration available via IFTTT. Which, if you haven't heard of IFTTT, that's if this, then that, and that is a service you really need to look at. I'm also going to be looking at me, Stringify. It's just, as you can appreciate, there's only so many hours in the day. So we're going to get started with the process, and we're going to shift over here to the IFTTT website because that's going to be a little easier to show you. Now, at this point, I'm going to assume that you've already got Cortana enabled with IFTTT. If you don't, not a problem. I've got it in the show notes. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, just go to techbiteswithronnutter.com and the same steps are there, or you can come over to YouTube and watch the whole process. So we've already got that done. Now it's a matter of we have to set up 2 applets, and that's going to trigger on turning it on and then turning it back off. Now, there may be a way you can do it one, but so far I found the easiest way is to have it with just one sequence to turn on or turn off and use another applet for that. So let's go over to the applet. We're going to go into settings, which is the little gear icon. And you'll see we've already got, this is just a description field here. Let me turn off the lower third. And when I was initially setting this up, had some challenges with it recognizing the name or word Wemo. I would say Wemo, Wemo. This is the first time I've seen Cortana act up like that, and it's probably not Cortana's fault. I may have a different way of pronouncing it versus the way it's doing its phonetic or voice analysis. So this isn't a challenge you're going to have when you start dealing with third-party integrations, and this may be a Cortana issue. I don't know. I haven't troubleshot it down to that level. So when I finally said plug off, then it started working a little bit better. And this is what you'll have it say, that it's turning off. Well, it still says turning off Wemo, but I just changed the keywords that turn it on and off. And that seemed to make it behave a little bit easier. Now, it's important to note that when you tell it which switch, well, let me see if you can do it. You'll see 2 selections here. It says all switches and then Wemo. The problem I ran into at one point when this started acting up, it said all switches, and it took Cortana noticeably longer to get things figured out. And sometimes it just got flat confused and said, here's your web search results. So make sure if it says all switches, it's going to have to go through a little bit more of a hoop jumping process to where if you have the specific one that you want the trigger to be for. And in my case, I've called my single Wemo device Wemo in terms of its name that I reference it to. And let me go into the app here and show you. And I apologize for not showing you the direct link on the phone like I normally do, but it's decided to act up tonight. So this is one of those things that I'm just going to roll with the punches, and we'll get it over on the other thing. So here's this is where, and I'm going to go back to larger screen here. This is where you see where I've got it set up. And this is always a good troubleshooting step because just before I started recording this video today, Cortana was, or at least what I perceived to be Cortana, was acting up a little bit. So I went in here and let me go tap it just right here. There we go. I had to tap it exactly on. And you see a bulb over here just on off to my left, your right. And that's what when I first looked at that, and I thought, it seemed like that that seemed to be okay. And then I went into the little gear icon and went to connect IFTTT, and I redid the connection. So I think somewhere in the process something got scrambled a little bit, and that seemed to take care of it, because once I did that, then things started working significantly better. So let's go back to Cortana, and then we'll just tap the little microphone, plug on.
Turning Wemo on.
Okay, so you see the bulb coming on. And then, of course, my watch is then going off because I've told it anytime certain triggers run to automatically send me an alert. Plug off. Okay, obviously it's having a little bit of an attitude adjustment tonight. Yes, something went wrong. You think? Plug off.
Turning off Wemo.
Okay, that time it worked right. Now that's one of the hurdles or challenges you will run into when you're doing third-party integrations, because occasionally something will get confused, hung up in the mix. So that really is, we're still kind of, and I may have said this before, this is still going to be in the early stages of things. It's going to get better. I mean, let's face it, I'm doing something that without the native Microsoft integration, it may occasionally have little hiccups and burps, where with IFTTT, and I'm going to test this with Unomi and Stringify to see how it reacts there. It might be something with the APIs that IFTTT is using, but the bottom line, it's going to take some troubleshooting. So we'll go back to the IFTTT website. So you can see, and you can give it multiple names. So if when we want to say plug off, we could have Wemo off and another way. So you can have multiple ways. So if you run into I'll call it a phrasing issue, to where one person pronounces something differently from another, and let's face it, that's going to happen. What you may say or you're thinking is one word, IFTTT may pick up and split to two words for whatever reason. And I've had that happen in another video. I did see where it was, I would say, me or whatever the phrase was, and it was splitting into two words because I was just the slightest pause in the parts of the word that I put it. Now, if I said it much faster, worked every time. So this is going to be a challenge that you're going to encounter from time to time, and making sure that you do have some testing in place. And this is where having let me bring it back up here, having the Wemo app in there, because it's much like when you're dealing with computer networks. You start at we'll call it layer one, and if you haven't heard that term before, don't worry about it. But it's basically you start looking at the cabling. So at this point, we would start looking at the Wemo app. Okay, can I talk to it from the Wemo app? Is there a problem? Maybe depending on if you've had a power surge, you might have to restart the Wemo device. It might be confused. It's possible, and I'm not just picking on Wemo. This is true of any of the smart home technology. If you have a power surge come through, and even if it's on a surge protector, there's still the chance that it might get a little scrambled. So if you can talk to it by the manufacturer's app, in this case Wemo, okay, that says your basic connectivity is there. Now, if you have other devices going through, say Wemo, not Wemo, but IFTTT, are those working? And you gradually step out to the endpoint. First we've got the Wemo app. Okay, that works. Now we look at IFTTT and look at the logging. Usually the apps will have some degree of logging and to let you know if it's seeing the request and how it's handing it off. Now you may have to dig under the hood a little bit. And this is where we'll go into, let's see, what will be services. I've dug into this. Oh, here we go. Activity right in front of me. And this is where if you see, get to the right screen here, you'll see this is where if you tell IFTTT to run applets, this is what will help you do the troubleshooting, because that's going to tell you is IFTTT or Unomi, or the same is going to apply to any of the third-party integrations. Are those getting the inquiry from, say, if you've got Cortana linked into this, or if it's something that Google Home doesn't natively support, is Google Home getting the request? And go from where you're issuing the command, in this case, my Samsung Galaxy S9, okay, does the Wemo app see it? Okay, if it does, now is the IFTTT app seeing it? Okay, if it is, then, like I showed you earlier, there's the specifics of if it said all switches, well, that's adding a delay. It did eventually get it turned on. But if I gave it the specific switch, it's not having to go through and do the API calls out to Wemo to say, okay, how many switches are out there? Or do I have more than just one? And that's going to help it. So the more specific you make some of this, it's going to help it be just a little bit better. And you may have some ability, and this is where I have not dealt with the Cortana piece that much. It should give you some degree of settings in there to be able to see what it thinks is going on, although it may do a little more than go, I don't know what the problem is. So it's learning how to troubleshoot your particular situation, and that's where the minimum, not the minimum, but having the device you're going to use, not having a wide variety of manufacturers. Now this is a plus to where the fewer you have to deal with, the more versed you will become at doing troubleshooting, because there may be particular idiosyncrasies to one brand or another, and it could be what, say, IFTTT would have a problem with today could be working fine tomorrow. You saw the one point where it hung, so without being able to look at the back end, and there are network protocol sniffs that you can use using something like Wireshark, but that may not be something you got familiar with doing, and especially if they're doing encryption, which all these integrations really should be doing, then all you're going to see is port 443 or something like that, and you're not going to be able to see inside it. Well, you can, but you've got to get certificates, and I've had Wireshark go inside an encrypted packet once, but I had all the certificates, the root certificate stuff to do that with, and that's way beyond what I'm going to be able to show you here. But the bottom line is, when you get things up and running, get familiar with what the app for the smart device tells you, what kind of logs it gives you or indications when it's processed something and when it hasn't. And then if you're doing a third-party integration, such as IFTTT, look at what they've got available, and then finally look at whatever voice control system to see if there's any back-end communications or records that it's keeping to help you figure it out. Because when you have something like this happen, you're not going to be able to go to IFTTT. You're not going to be able to go to Unomi in most cases. Well, not Unomi, but say if it's Wemo. Wemo may not be able to help you because they can have some visibility into their cloud, but depending on network conditions that day, there could be something that is unique to your part of the country. So it's just, you're going to have to kind of crawl before you walk, learn how everything works, and then just remember the basics. Use the manufacturer's app to first work with the device. Does it respond there? Okay, now let's go to, if you're using a third-party integration, let's look at that to see if that is where the problem is. What I found today when I was doing the troubleshooting is I had to reconnect or reauthorize Wemo with IFTTT. And there was a function in the Wemo app that made that very transparent. Once I did that, things started working. So something got a little bit out of kilter. It could be while I was changing the wireless network that the Wemo device was on. There's several things, and it could have been just the phase of the moon. But bottom line is you'll need to learn how to do some troubleshooting, because sometimes things are just going to happen. Let's face it. That's called life and dealing with technology. So we're going to start delving into some other things with IFTTT. I'm going to start showing how to use Unomi, how to start using Stringify. You know some of the other videos I've been doing. So I've got a lot of things lined out. If there's anything particular you've got an interest in, please let me know. I'm running way behind on getting responses back to those who have left me questions, and thank you for being patient. I've got some equipment on the way in, so I've been trying to get ready for that. But there's a lot of potential for this, and especially for those of you who are members of a nonprofit organization or service organizations, that there are ways using this kind of technology, and it doesn't have to cost a whole lot. Sonoff was a very good, or is a very good example of that, and other manufacturers, I think, will start seeing the benefits of what it can do for those that aren't able to do some things for themselves. So if you've got an older person that has problems getting light switches turned on, or is not able to easily for some reason, then using something like Wemo or other kinds of technology where you can put it under voice control, and the voice control doesn't have to be sophisticated. I mean, it can be something like an Amazon Echo Dot. It can be an appliance like the Harman Kardon Invoke that's got Cortana built in natively. It can be the Google Assistant. So there's any number of ways you can do this. It's finding out what's going to work best for that person. And then please, whatever you do, document this. So if somebody coming in behind you has, they're not sure what you've done, and this would be something good to leave with the person you're doing this for, saying, okay, here's what we did. Here are the steps that we went through. So even if they aren't able to troubleshoot it, they can hand that to somebody else, and makes it easier for somebody else other than you has to come back in. And nothing else, if this is for your own network at home, then that's going to be another thing good to have with having the basic documentation steps written down. So, it's a win-win in all respects. Well, I've gone on long enough. Thank you for watching the video. This is part of the series that I'm working on, and I've got the picture up on the screen right now for those of you who are listening to the podcast of Volume 1 in my series, Making Your Home Work for You, a DIY smart home guide. I'm working on Volume 2, and this information will be in Volume 2. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on the podcast. I've just recently set up a dedicated site, techbiteswithronnutter.com, where I'm linked into iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, you name it, I've got it out there somehow. And if there's another network I can tie into, I want to make the information as accessible for you as I can to be a resource. Because let's face it, some of this stuff is not documented real well. And I'm not faulting the manufacturers. They can only anticipate so many situations. So thank you for your time. I'm trying to post about 2 to 3 videos a week. There may be a week once in a while when this thing called work gets in the way. So I may miss some time, but I'm trying to get some videos and stuff built up so that I can at least get one out during the week. So appreciate your time watching the video, and we'll see you in the next episode.